Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another live episode of the Backyard SmokeMaster BBQ Podcast. I'm your host, Kenyatta Robinson. Welcome aboard. First thing I always like to do is to encourage everyone to please be active in the comments, leave comments, ask questions, whether it's about the topic that we're specifically covering this evening or anything else that's on your mind related to barbecue. I'd love to hear from you, and the comments, feedback is the engine that drives the show. One of the more common topics that comes up on the podcast, as well as through the course of me making videos, is questions regarding wood, like which woods are the best for smoking, which ones will pair up best with meat, which ones have certain flavor smoke profiles, questions in those areas. And really, the answer to that question is very subjective. I mean, ultimately, it's going to come down to your preference. So, no one person can tell another exactly what is the ultimate best wood for smoking and barbecue. But over the course of time, the barbecue community does have we have come up with some pretty good ideas about how certain woods do impart flavor. Before we get deeper into that discussion, let's say hello to a few folks who are tuning in already and jumping in with comments, which I absolutely love and appreciate. Mike from Bones Barbecue says, "Good evening. Let's get it." Thank you for tuning in, Mike. Always appreciate you. And then we have correctional officer for lockdown, Bruce, is on board, and he says hi to Mike, and he says, "Let's get this awesome show going. Perfect topic." So thank you both for tuning in and for jumping in with comments. That is always appreciated. So to help me get through and, cover everything I wanted to cover, I did put together some slides here. And let me see if I can get this. It's looking a little bit weird on my screen here. Sorry, guys. I am producing and hosting, doing it all. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. All right, so here we go. I've got my presentation up, so let's get into this. All right, so the big question: how does wood affect the flavor of barbecue? So, the type of wood that you use can significantly impact the flavor of your food, and different wood types will impart unique flavors. The flavors and aromas due to variations in their resin, sap, and lignin. And lignin, I had to look this up because I'm not, getting deep into the science is not, what I'm going or trying to do, but I did at least want to know what lignin is. And it's a branching material that holds the plant together and keeps it stable. So basically, it's what gives trees their strength. And, when it comes to different types of wood, the flavors are going to range from mild to strong. So getting started, let's talk about some of the wood types that have a very strong flavor and aroma. So starting off, hickory, and hickory is probably the most popular wood for smoking, and it does pair great with ribs, pork shoulder, and beef. And, as we go through this, let me know in the comments, what you guys, if you have a favorite type of wood, if you have a specific experience with wood and how it pairs up, definitely let me know. As Mike said, good evening to correctional officer for lockdown. And then Bruce, correctional officer, said, "Kenyatta, great topic for your awesome show. I cooked jerk chicken this past Mother's Day and it turned out perfect. I didn't have any apple wood chunks and relied on natural wood chips. Perfect." All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I do have an opinion about wood chips as opposed to the wood chunks. And I know you said you didn't have any wood chunks, so you had to go with the wood chips. So in a pinch, I think that's okay. That's acceptable for sure. But I think in most situations, I would recommend to steer clear of the wood chips, because then there becomes the question of should you soak them or not? And ultimately the chips, I just think, they're just a little bit too thin. Uh, they ignite really fast, and I'm not convinced that they really give off. Um, they're not efficient for giving off a good smoke flavor, probably unless you're just using a whole lot of them. So that's kind of a sneak peek into my thoughts about using wood chips as opposed to going with wood chunks. But in a pinch, though, I get it. And correctional officer says the smoke, smell, and entire cook was one of the best cooks I ever attempted. All right. Well, I'm definitely glad to hear that. And I think maybe that also goes with another one of the key points that I was going to bring up is when you do smoke with wood and with wood chunks, especially for people who are just starting out, one of the things you want to be very careful of is to not use too much. Don't go too heavy if you're smoking with charcoal, because charcoal is already made from wood. So you don't need to add a whole lot, when it comes to wood chunks in combination with charcoal. So I think this is a good sign that you had the right combination going with your charcoal and it didn't overpower your cook. And you said that I've been using apple as the wood I should use. And that's the key is, experiment, try different things. And actually we do recommend that you start with something that's a little bit more on the mild side until you find, the one that will give you the smoke flavor and aroma that works best for you and your family and based on what you're cooking. And then correctional officer says, I soaked the chips and spread them over the charcoal and also used a smoke box and placed it on the charcoal. I didn't have any flare-ups and the smoke was clean as a whistle. I was lucky. Well, definitely, take note of that. And, absolutely, yeah, take note of that. Remember that combination because it looks like you found something that really works well for you. So let's move a little bit further along. So again, one of the woods that will impart a very strong flavor is hickory. So that would be one. Anything under this strong category, I would say. Make sure that you're using these wood types in moderation and not going too heavy with it, especially when you're using mesquite. And me personally, I don't fool with mesquite. I just think it's a little bit too intense, at least for my preference. But I know, especially in Texas, there are some restaurants, and they're experts. They know what they're doing, and some of them will cook only with mesquite. Mesquite is very intense, earthy flavor, best used in moderation, and commonly used with beef and wild game. And then another one that's strong is pecan. So pecan has a more nutty and sweet flavor than hickory, but it's still strong. And it works really well with ribs, poultry, and beef. All right, we have a comment from Tyrone. He says, hello, Kenyatta and family. Thank you for your dedication to the barbecue community. Thank you, Tyrone. I do appreciate your comment. And, speaking of community, I do want to mention that we do have a new barbecue community that is open right now. It's officially open. The doors will stay open until June the 30th, and it's called the Backyard SmokeMaster Society. And if you would like to get more information about that, go to backyardsmokemaster.com/community before the doors close on June 30th. We'll be having meetups kind of like this, except I will be cooking during those meetups as well. And everyone else who chooses to turn their cameras and mics on are free to show what they're cooking as well during those meetups. We've got barbecue challenges. And then it's just like a forum, kind of like on Facebook, where you can go on and post a question, a topic, and then people respond. We have that as well. It's not free, but it's not too costly. I mean, you can get in for the cost of a couple of cups of Starbucks coffee. So really affordable. So I would love if you decided to check me out and go deeper with our barbecue discussions in the Backyard SmokeMaster Society. All right, let's see. We're still getting some more comments here. Appreciate and love the feedback. Tyrone also says, loving your show. Just found it and recently subscribed to your channel. Again, appreciate that, Tyrone. Definitely appreciate that. Glad to have you. And yeah, we're here. My goal is to be live doing the podcast every Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. And definitely, put in your comments. Let me know what type of topics you would like to hear more about, and I'll try to cover it. That's basically what I'm trying to do is, provide live discussion on topics of interest to people like you and I who love and are passionate about barbecue. All right, Mike from Bones Barbecue says, Mesquite is dangerous, laugh out loud, burns really hot. Yeah, that's another point too. Yeah, I just think you really have to know what you're doing if you're cooking with Mesquite, especially if you're going exclusive with Mesquite. That one, that's the one I definitely say tread carefully, if you're gonna smoke with Mesquite. And Bruce, correctional officer, says, welcome aboard, Tyrone. This is truly a great show too. Thank you, Bruce. And I think a big part of what makes it great is the community that we're forming right here on the live version of the podcast. So again, appreciate everyone. And Tyrone says, a lot of the barbecue spots in Oakland are using white oak and cherry. Okay, so Tyrone, you're a fellow Bay Area person. I'm also here in the Bay Area in the East Bay. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that, but I hadn't really been, investigating. But that's interesting to know that a lot of the barbecue spots here are using white oak and cherry. I've mentioned this before in the Bay Area. I find that oak and cherry and almond to me seem to be what is readily available. Like if you go to a tree supply type place that sells wood splits, that seems to be what's available in abundance. But I've always had difficulty figuring out exactly what type of oak they're using. So that's interesting that you're saying white oak. So that's really cool. Yep. And then he says also almond and pecan. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like I said, I think I just said that almond is one of the ones that's usually available in the Bay Area. Definitely have a lot of almond growing in this area. Okay, so let's continue. So these are the three that I've bucketed as strong flavored wood types: hickory, mesquite, and pecan. And I do think that almond, since we mentioned almond is pretty similar to pecan, although I like pecan better personally. But I think almond kind of has a similar smoke and aroma profile as pecan. And it makes sense since they're both nut trees. Now, coming in on the medium side, let's start with oak. And oak is highly versatile. and it provides a medium intensity flavor and works well with almost any meat. I would say, if you're someplace where oak is readily available and easy to get, I would, especially if you're cooking with wood splits, I'd say stock up, because I think oak really does go well with just about everything. It's um, pretty neutral. I guess I'm going to call it neutral. Like, it's not, definitely not too strong, won't overpower your food. And I think another advantage of oak is that it will pair well with other types of wood in case you want to, combine some things. So oak is great. I love oak. Next up on the medium scale is maple. So maple will give a sweet and subtle smoke flavor, and it's ideal for poultry, pork, and veggies as well. All right. Bruce says, I plan to experiment with seeing what works well with lump charcoal since it burns hot and fast. And that's the key. That really is the key, is to experiment, try different things, see what works well, what you like, what combination works well for you. That is really, really the key. All right. Let's keep it going. Hold on as I get my footing back here. Okay, next up on the medium side, we've got cherry wood. So cherry gives a mild, and it's mild and slightly sweet with a hint of fruitiness. And cherry works really well with pork, poultry, and beef. And me personally, I love to combine cherry with something that might be a little stronger, and be it oak. I love to combine oak with cherry, or if I'm cooking with hickory, I like to combine it with cherry as well. Cherry is probably my favorite of the fruit woods, but that's just, again, that's a personal preference that I have. All right, so on the mild side, and we talked about this, Bruce talked about how he likes to use apple. And I think apple is also a great fruit wood to use. It's very mild, slightly sweet, excellent with poultry and pork. I think apple is also a great one to have in your smoking arsenal. Peach is similar to apple, but slightly more floral. Also goes great with poultry and pork. And then another mild one, and this is one that I like to use with fish and seafood, is alder wood. So it's delicate, slightly sweet, and like I said, it works really well with fish as well as seafood. So lots of variety, lots of choices when it comes to different wood types. And here are some tips. Um, Again, as we talked about, a good idea is to mix and match. You don't have to go strictly exclusively with just one wood type. Play around with it, see what works well. So combine different wood types to create unique flavor profiles. Another thing that we talked about is start with something mild. If you're new to smoking, don't go straight for the more bold, strong wood types. Kind of ease into it. Go with something mild. Maybe start with something like apple or cherry, and then, gradually move up to the stronger flavors, or, maybe gradually do a mix and match, add something stronger to the mild wood that you start with. And then should you use chips or chunks? So I know Bruce had great success with wood chips in his last cook, and that's great. That's outstanding. But generally, when it comes to this question, like I mentioned earlier, I usually just recommend that just go with the wood chunks. The chips, they burn fast. They don't really produce a lot of significant smoke flavor unless you use them, in abundance. And then if you do use wood chunks, and this is really when you're cooking with charcoal. Again, remember, charcoal is already made from wood. So you're already going to get, some smoke flavor from wood. A lot of the charcoal, especially lump charcoal, a lot of it is made with some type of an oak wood usually. So you're already getting some smoke flavor. So you don't need to go crazy, with the wood chunks. Go in moderation. I think a good rule of thumb to be on the safe side is, get enough that will fit in your fist. That's usually enough, especially starting off. But then, as you get more comfortable, you get more experience, you can, increase that as well. The key is, again, continue to experiment and try different things until you find what works for you. And Bruce confirms that he does prefer chunks. Another thing I'll say, I didn't add it here, but especially if you're cooking with wood splits, like if you have a stick burner, an offset smoker, I would also highly recommend, in that case, go with what is easy to get in your community, right? Because when you're cooking with wood splits, you're wanting to buy, a lot, big quantities. I know sometimes you'll see the wood splits in a bag, like at a hardware store. I think B&B and a few other companies, sell them. Like you might be able to get it at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it might be like maybe $20 for, I can't even remember if it's how many pounds it is. I just know that that's not really the economical way to go. Probably best, and what I would recommend is go to a tree supply or a tree company that cuts down trees. It's in your area, or, get on Craigslist. You can also find, a lot of times on Craigslist, you might see listings for like a cord of wood. Go with that. That'll be much more economical. And then also what you'll find is that there'll be more of certain types of wood depending on where you live. You might live in an area where there's an abundance of hickory. As Tyrone mentioned, here in the Bay Area, and what I've observed is that we typically have a lot of almond, a lot of oak, and I think maybe to a slightly lesser extent cherry, but cherry is pretty easy to get here in the Bay Area as well. So, don't go crazy trying to chase after certain wood types when it comes to wood splits. Go with what's available in your area. I think that's the best way to go. And Mike co-signs on that. And Mike of Bones Barbecue says, great point about using what's available. I strictly use red oak for a few reasons, mainly because it's readily available. Yeah, so definitely adapt to what you can get. Mike says, I'm in Southern California, and red oak, white oak, and hickory is pretty available. And yeah, that's the key. Find out, go with what's readily available in your area. All right, guys. So if you would like to get a copy of this presentation, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. All you got to do is go to backyardsmokemaster.com/wood, and we'll get that sent right over to you. So let me know in the comments. So do you guys that do cook with wood. I know Mike is he mentions that he's using white oak and hickory, red oak, you know. So what do you guys find tends to go best with certain types of wood? Like, do you have a certain wood that you like to use with pork versus beef versus seafood? Definitely, let me know. Let me know what you're cooking with. All right, let me get this. Again, I am going solo here today. All right. So I'm always a little bit slow making these transitions, but we got that together. So let me know. Let me know in the comments. And then also, feel free to let me know anything else going on in your barbecue world that you are excited about. Maybe you're thinking about getting a new grill, a new smoker, or trying a new recipe. Definitely let us know in the comments what you've got, what you've got on the horizon. Bruce with correctional officer Bruce says, I like using apple and cherry chunks with my ribs. Yeah, and I think the fruit woods are usually very safe. I think that's always a great way to go because again they're not too strong, so they're not going to overpower your food, and I think that's a good way to go. And usually when I'm doing ribs, sometimes I'll go all cherry, sometimes I'll go all apple, or I might, mix it up a little bit, maybe combine hickory or pecan with cherry when I'm going with my ribs. All right. Tyrone thanked Bruce, being supportive in the chat. Love to see that. And then Mike says, to add more to the conversation, buying splits is more work than just finding it and unloading it. I then have to separate it, split it again, and trim it down for size with a miter saw. That's a good point. And yeah, that is very true. It's definitely not just, you find the wood splits and then bring it home and you're good to go. Absolutely. Like if you're buying different wood types, yeah, you probably have to separate it so you can keep it all straight. And then the point about splitting it again and trimming it down for size, that's a good point as well, because depending on the size of the firebox on the stick burner or offset smoker that you have, you really want to get your wood splits to be at an optimal size to fit inside of your firebox and burn efficiently. So you don't want wood splits that are too large, that are crowding up on the inside of your firebox. Cutting them down to the optimal size is key, and especially if you have a smaller offset. Like I have a pretty, what I would consider to be a smaller offset, especially compared with something, one of these big gallon, mega gallon smokers that I know Mike is using. I have a LSG Lone Star Grills 20x42, and that has a relatively small firebox. And I think the wood splits probably work best when they are no greater than 10 inches long, and maybe, I'm going to say maybe 4 to 6 inches wide. So getting them down to size is also very much key. All right. Bruce says, I've been cleaning my yard and am lucky to have a nice sized outdoor fireplace. I can't wait to experiment cooking on it and using some wood chunks. My wife wants us to smoke a pig this summer. Well, now you've really caught my interest, and I love the fact that your wife is supportive and encouraging you to smoke a pig. That has been on my bucket list for a long time. And although Janine, my wife, is super supportive, she's been a little bit hesitant when it comes to the smoke a pig discussion. And I wish you were here if I could put her on the spot, to talk more about why, she's a little bit hesitant about that. And I don't know if it's, just visually seeing, a pig carcass, if that's what's, got her a little bit shaken up, shook up. But, I keep trying to tell her, if we do that, we could have a pig picking party. We can get people over here. We will have no problem consuming the pig. So, Bruce, I really hope and I'm rooting for you to be able to do that. All right. Tyrone says, there's seasoned firewood in Richmond, Bare Bottom Farms firewood. Yeah, I've heard of Bare Bottom Farms, and I haven't made it over there yet, but I know that is a place that does have seasoned firewood. I've been going to, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a place in American Canyon, so a little bit farther out, kind of headed out towards Napa. And it's right across from that. There's like a super Walmart center. So it's across the street from there that I've been getting my wood from. And they usually have oak and almond and cherry, but I do, because the Bare Bottom Farms in Richmond would be a much shorter drive for me. So I'm going to keep that in mind. So thanks for mentioning that, Tyrone. All right, Bruce says, great minds think alike. Probably talking about that pig. Yeah. I'm really interested to hear about that. Mike says, your neighbors are going to be peeking over your fence, Bruce. That's right. And yeah, if you do it, man, you got to have a pig picking party, get your neighbors in on it. You'll be the hero for sure. And he says, Mike, they have already noticed the fireplace. They're getting back to Bare Bottom Farms firewood. Tyrone says, actually, he's saying for ribs, he likes to use cherry and pecan. Yeah, that's a great combination for ribs. And he says that, okay, my smokers he has a 16-inch horizon offset. Cool. And he has a gateway drum. All right. So you've got that's a nice combination there. I mean, personally, my favorite thing, even though I haven't been using it as much just because of time, but when I do have the time, my favorite smoker to use is still my offset smoker, my LSG. There's just nothing like cooking with the wood splits, slow smoking something. And usually when I do, it's usually brisket or beef ribs. Even though I think I might break it out next weekend and do some baby back ribs. But then also like the drum, drum smokers, I think drum smokers like the Gateway are outstanding, great all-purpose smokers. They're super easy to use, super easy to learn. You get that temperature dialed in, and that's not hard to do. And they are just great. They're versatile. And I do, especially for people starting out, if you're trying to figure out it, especially if you're just thinking that you want to do some smoking, I would highly recommend considering a drum smoker. Those are great. And Tyrone says, hey, Mike, I hear you. I'm that guy who just bought the wood, the splitter, and the miter. Okay, so Tyrone so he's got that. He's been bitten by the bug. He's serious. Yeah, when you go out and you get the wood and you get and that's what I have. I get the wood, you got the splitter, like I forgot what it's called, but it's like like a big blade in the center, and it's like a ring around the big blade. You can put your wood split on top, and then you hammer down on that on your wood split, to split it in half. You got to have that. And then, to get even more precise, or if you've got like a really large split of wood to get it under control, the miter, having a miter saw is essential. So Tyrone is definitely in this for the long haul. So I love it. Robert says, if you live near nut or fruit orchards, you can get free wood if you are willing to take what is cut after they've got done pruning the trees. That's a great point as well. Yeah, a lot of times you can get, free wood. You just have to put in the labor, yourself of, getting it loaded and removing it. But that's another great way to go. Absolutely. That's another good recommendation, something to keep in mind. Bruce, aka Correctional Officer, says, what's a nice wood choice for me to smoke my first brisket? All right, you guys jump in with the comments. Let me know what you guys think for Bruce is a good wood choice to smoke his first brisket. So I give that a second before I chime in with my thoughts on that. I want to see if anybody else has some thoughts. Tyrone says, I'm still learning the fire control management. Yeah. So yeah, you've got your offset smoker, your horizon, and yeah, keep at it. It's, unlike the drum smoker, which is something that's pretty easy to, pick up and learn fire temperature control. Learning that on an offset smoker is going to take some time, but be patient. And what I would say is, really observe what happens when you put a wood split in. I guess I'm trying to think of giving you some tips here. One, make sure that you start off with a nice, good bed of burning charcoal before you start off. So with the startup process on an offset smoker, and Mike, you might have some ideas on this too. I think that is really key. So don't be in a hurry. Give yourself time to get a good fire bed of coals going before you start, putting your meat on and cooking with it. I think how you start will play a great role in your ability then to consistently get your splits in and then get them in the temperature range that you want. And then another key point I would say, Tyrone, is don't obsess about trying to have your temperature at a certain temperature. So like if in your mind you're thinking that you want to smoke at 250 degrees, give yourself grace. If your smoker is just kind of wanting to live between 225 and 275, that is absolutely okay. It's really not that much of a difference. Don't drive yourself nuts trying to make, these adjustments, trying to nail it down exactly to 250. It's much easier to nail down a precise temperature on like a drum smoker than it is on an offset. The offset, each wood split is different, and the temperature range on an offset is going to be wider, than it is like on a drum smoker or a kettle. So those are two ideas that I have. And then before I forget, so again, Bruce was asking, what's a nice wood choice to smoke his first brisket? So I think oak is a really safe pick that goes well with just about everything. Maybe combine the oak with, you like apple or cherry. I think that's a good way to go. So I would say, try to go with things that are kind of in the medium to mild range. You can also do hickory, but just, maybe go in moderation, stay away from the mesquite. But yeah, I think my recommendation would be like oak. Maybe combine oak with apple or oak with cherry. All right, Tyrone said, okay, cool, Bruce, true, brave heart. So good you guys are interacting in the comments. Tyrone, salute. You have an awesome arsenal. Yeah, I think he's got a great collection. Robert says pecan by itself is great, but a mix with any type of fruit wood can elevate it also. Absolutely. Pecan is also, I think oak is great with a lot of things, and then so is pecan. I think pecan pairs well with cherry and apple as well. I think that's another one that's good for combining with something else. And then Mike, and again, Mike can be found on Instagram, Bones Barbecue. And Mike is also, he does some professional cooking in the Southern California area. So if you're down there, look for Mike. He says, number one thing to know, yeah, when you're talking about cooking with an offset smoker, number one thing to know is you need a solid coal bed. Number two, use the right size splits. Yeah, that's a great point as well. So make sure, again, like I mentioned, get a nice coal bed to start with. And then also, like he mentioned, use that splitter, use that miter saw that you have to get your splits at the optimal size to use in the firebox with your offset smoker. And then Bruce says, fire control is definitely a skill. I was pleased with my cook on Monday because the fire was steady, not one flare up. And that's really is I think the key to barbecue, to be perfectly honest. It is temperature control. People who want to learn how to barbecue, and they have a lot of questions, but that's the first thing is, learn your pit, learn how to control the temperature on your pit. That's how you really learn how to barbecue. Not allowing your temperatures to get too hot and get out of control, because if it gets too hot, once you burn something, there's no coming back. It's over. It's a wrap if your food is burnt. But if the temperature is low and you're going low and slow, it might take longer to get where you want, but your food is still, you can still work with that. So definitely better to be on the cooler side than on the raging fire, too hot, out of control side. So that would be, I think that is really, really the key. Okay, let me also do another pitch here with regard to the community. So if you like what you see here and you want to go deeper, you want to have interactions, Bruce is already in the community, definitely encourage you to check us out, the Backyard SmokeMaster Society. And hold on here. I had it and then I did something to mess it up. Okay, here we go. So the Backyard SmokeMaster Society. And then this is just a little peek, at what we got going on. So when you first join, I've got some guidelines. I'd like everyone to agree and take a pledge to follow the Backyard SmokeMaster Society's 10 barbecue commandments. So these are things that you should do anyway if you're serious and you really want to up your barbecue game. Commit to using quality meat, season well, control the heat, which is something we've been talking about, apply smoke wisely, be patient, don't overcook, don't burn up your food, let the meat rest, and use the right sauce if you choose any. And there's a few others, but that's just, just to give you guys a little bit of an example. So again, the Backyard SmokeMaster Society is an online barbecue community for people like you and I who love to talk about barbecue, who are passionate about it. The society is now open, and the doors will be open until June 30th. We're ramping up on July 4th. We're going to have a live virtual cookout. And this was the brainchild of correctional officer for lockdown, Bruce. He kind of put that bug in my ear about that. And, I decided to take it even further, but that's something that we talked about and that we're going to do. So everyone who's part of the community is welcome to turn their cameras, their mics on, show us what you're cooking, what you're smoking on the 4th of July. And then we're also going to do kind of like a practice run coming up on, I think it's on Saturday, June the 8th. We'll have our first virtual meetup for those who can participate. So these are just examples of the fun stuff that we're going to be doing inside of the community. So I would love to have all of you, check us out. You can get in for like the price of two cups of Starbucks per month. And if you love barbecue, that should be nothing. All right. All right. Mike says, no problem, Tyrone. Also, preheat your splits by setting them on top of your firebox. This will help them ignite faster. I feel our community doesn't talk about fire management enough. And that's another great tip. Yeah. Two ways. Yeah, you can, definitely put your split, because the idea is when you put your wood split into your firebox, you add a new split, is you want it to ignite quickly. So as Mike says, allowing it to preheat by resting it on top of your firebox is a great way to do it. Also, kind of depending on your firebox. So I have what do you call it? I guess it's called a charcoal grate. No, a charcoal box, firebox. I'm getting when I get a live on here, the words kind of escape me. I have a contraption inside of my firebox, kind of a V shape, and I keep my burning wood splits and coals are inside of, the metal contraption, to basically allow me to have a small contained fire inside of my firebox. And then right next to it, inside of the firebox, there's enough space for me to put the next wood split that I want to, add to the fire. So I also preheat my wood splits that way inside of my firebox. So you can do either way. Put it inside of your firebox to the side of the burning fire, or you can place your wood split on top of your firebox. That is another way. Another way to get your wood splits preheated and ready to go when it's time to add it to the fire. All right. And Bruce says, Kenyatta, what's your view about a mop sauce on your ribs? It's a personal preference. I think, if I have no issue with doing a mop sauce. I think, if you like to sauce your ribs, I think the idea is that you want to wait until, basically you're in the last portion of the rib cook before you start adding the sauce, because you don't want the sauce to burn. So maybe like that last, 20 to 30 minutes. I think it's perfectly fine, to add a mop sauce, at that point. All right, guys, we've been going at it now for almost an hour. I do want to thank you all, for coming in, contributing with your comments and your questions. Again, as I always say, the comments that we receive and the questions are the engine that really drives the show. So I do want to thank, as we get ready to wrap things up, I want to thank Mike, aka Bones Barbecue. Make sure you check him out on Instagram. I want to thank Bruce, aka Correctional Officer for Lockdown. Always appreciate your ongoing support. Tyrone, welcome to the barbecue community. Don't be a stranger, especially love the fact that you are also a Bay Area guy. So definitely, welcome you to come back, tune in, same time, same place, Friday evening. Let's see. And I think we heard from another person, Robert Nelson. Thank you. Appreciate you for chiming in as well. All right, you guys. So again, let me know, always in the comments, things that you would like to see us talk about on the podcast. Definitely want to address, the things that you guys are interested in. So thank you again for tuning in. This is Kenyatta Robinson signing off. Thank you for watching the Backyard SmokeMaster BBQ channel. We'll be back again next week, same time, here on YouTube and on the Backyard SmokeMaster Facebook channel. And then also, you can also catch the replay whenever you're ready, either on YouTube or you can listen in on your favorite audio podcast platform. Thanks again. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.